All right. So we're beginning a two-part series that, with my family's permission and with your permission, will be a three-part series. I will confirm that next week, but as it stands now, it's a three-part series. So although we only advertise this week and next week, Irina, our dear programmer, said, if we're doing such an important series about personal freedom and liberation, and we're doing this in honor of Pesach, which is the upcoming festival, why not go 3 weeks? Is there any reason not to? And I said, no, I don't know why it was scheduled for 2 weeks. To which she realized, well, that's what she had originally scheduled. So the same pen that organized 2 weeks has now organized 3 weeks. So this is a 3-week series. So if you have something on in 2 weeks from tonight, cancel it. Don't say I didn't ask you. Okay, so we want to explore 5 very, very important things, and I promise you colloquially, so I'm not actually making a vow, Leonardo, to revisit the things that we're going to explore over the next 3 weeks again later in the year, and I hope to touch on it again next year, and so on and so forth, because the things we're going to discuss are core areas of tikkun required within the human psyche. The word tikkun can mean to fix, the word tikkun can mean to correct, and the word tikkun can mean to create order, to order things, to put things in their correct place. And we usually use this word tikkun to indicate that there is something that requires correction, or there is a chaos that needs ordering. When we talk about the human condition, when we talk about people requiring a tikkun, it's because there are aspects of us which are nature, and then there are aspects of us which are the product of nurture, that require us to fix and correct certain personality traits, certain methods of operating. They may not be things that we are responsible for. They may be a result of previous lives. They may be things that we're carrying over from one life to the next by the soul. Whatever it is, just because we have it, it doesn't mean we can live with it. So I'd like to begin with a very, very dangerous statement, a statement that will most probably offend at least one person in this room, but unlike the way we finished last week's class, I don't regret if I do offend you. I just ask for your apology. I apologize. I ask you for your forgiveness. And that is that there are 2 ways to respond to tragedy. One is to be defined by it. The other is to learn from it. And those 2 are not the same. Sometimes they come together, but doesn't mean that they're the same. So I want to talk about this in context of being a Jew, what this actually means. We as a people have gone through many, many things. And it seems that in the last 70 years especially, because that's really where the method of mass recording has taken place, more than ever in history, anyone can write something now. You don't have to even know how to spell, and you can publish it with blogs and social media and every other platform. You can say what you want. You don't even need people to read it in order to publish it. Once upon a time, you needed to guarantee that people were going to read your stuff in order to publish it. So in the last 70 years, we've been able to see immense amount of Jewish humor and comedy. Comedy plays a very, very vital role in the Jewish community, the global community. And one of the biggest areas of joking is not the Holocaust, because no one can get away with making jokes about the Holocaust. I think that's the only reason why no one makes jokes. We don't joke about the Holocaust, we joke about the response to the Holocaust. We make jokes about the way our parents deal with just different aspects of their life, but the way they deal with their life was often the result of the traumas that they grew up in the house of a Holocaust survivor, or they themselves are Holocaust survivors. And so we've used humor as a way of freeing ourselves of certain darkness. Now, this is all part of an interesting Jewish concept, which is that we are not defined by the things that we go through. What does that mean? It means that because something happens to us, and I'm going to define this word define so that no one misunderstands what I'm saying. Because we go through certain things, it does not mean we have an excuse to behave in a certain way. That has never been an acceptable path in our tradition. We have never, ever had this idea of justifying a crime or justifying an action or even justifying a word that is the product, that is a negative product of a previous trauma. While we respect the idea of trauma, we also believe in a proactive response to trauma. And Judaism has very, very, very strong guidelines on that, which I'm not going to go into tonight. But I'm bringing up because we can't, based on that, we can't allow certain aspects within us to exist just because something happened to us. We're not allowed to hate. But there is no shortage of people that we should be allowed to hate. But we're not allowed to hate. That doesn't mean we don't believe in justice. That doesn't mean we don't believe in dealing with something that has happened. But one thing is that we don't carry it. So this week I want to talk about anger. I want to talk about jealousy. And I want to talk about depression. Now, my little caveat, when we talk about depression tonight, we're not talking about clinical depression, which I'll just clarify is any form of depression which involves medicinal support, chemical support, or intense therapeutic support. The reason why I'm not talking about that is because Kabbala does not address people who are not in a position to help themselves with their current faculties. So if someone is missing an arm, God forbid, Judaism doesn't talk about, well, put on tefillin anyway. We don't address that. Tefillin is for people who have arms. If a person doesn't have an arm, it doesn't apply. When Kabbala, Hasidic teaching, and Jewish spirituality addresses different aspects of changing our behavior, we are only talking to someone who is able to. And what that means is what we're going to explore tonight, able to. But I can tell you straight out, if someone is what's called clinically depressed, nothing I am saying tonight relates to that, because that is not for the spec of Kabbala to address. Kabbala is addressing, when we talk about depression, we're talking about that dark mood, that sad state, that debilitating state that has not yet consumed us to a point that we need outside assistance in order to climb out. We are talking about that dark state which we still have the internal ability to climb out. If someone can't, that is not a bad thing. That is a state of being. That's all. That's all. It's just like a person who has acid reflux or something else so if you have acid reflux because you eat certain foods that gives you acid, that's one thing. And then you have people that suffer from acid permanently, nothing to do with what they're eating. And that requires medical intervention. So we're not talking about medical intervention tonight. Pesach. Let me talk about Pesach for a moment. Does everyone here know the story of Pesach? If yes, great, you're going to hear it again. If not, listen carefully. I'm giving you the most abridged version. The children of Jacob head down to Egypt. And then they settle there with their father. They have children. They have grandchildren. Those original children die, and there are grandchildren, great-grandchildren. They have populated, and they're living in an area of Egypt. There's a new government in Egypt, a new pharaoh, who is not happy about this mass Jewish population or this mass Hebrew population, and so he enslaves them. And for the next 80-odd years, the people are enslaved as a form of population control, as a form of torture, and as a form of gently annihilating the people. gently, because an easy way is just kill them, and the other way is just die them out. And at the end of that story, there is a child who grows into a man, and into an older man, and his name is Moses. Moses stands at a burning bush one day while he's tending to his sheep. I'm not going into why he wasn't a slave. You can read the story in the Torah for that. And the voice says, "Go to Egypt and take my people out." So off he goes to Pharaoh, and he starts negotiating, and there are 10 plagues, and eventually the Jews go free. And the sea splits, we end up in the desert, our GPS runs out of signal, we wander around for 40 years until we eventually get to Israel. The rest is history. That's my version. I think it's a pretty good version. Now, there are some key words in that story. Egypt. The Hebrew word for Egypt is Mitzrayim. The term of Exodus is Yitziat Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt. That's what happened to the Jewish people. Everything that happens historically, everything that is taught in the Torah is not just a story, it is a description of what happens within an individual, and it is a description of a macro existence of which this world, this universe, is a micro component. There is a concept called Egypt. There is a place called Egypt. And there is a personality trait called Egypt. Everything that exists in multiple dimensions, within the dimension of concept, the dimension of place, and the dimension within a person as a personality trait. Everything. Everything. The 10 Sefirot. Raise your hands if the 10 Sefirot means something. You've heard something about it, you've read. Okay. The 10 Sefirot are the 10 primary energies from which everything exists and in which everything operates. The 10 Sefirot are Chochmah bin Odas, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, and finished with Malchus. Chochmah bin Odas is the intellectual capacity. Chochmah, the ability to conceive an idea. Bina, the ability to revisit and design the idea, to revisit and develop. Da'at is to be able to deliver an idea. So Chochmah, you have a brainwave, an incredible idea. Bina is you think about it. Da'at is you are clear enough to be able to speak it out to another person. If you've ever had an idea and then struggled to share it with another person, that is because you've experienced Chochmah, and part of Bina, you have not got Das. Das is the ability to transmit your thinking. Bina is the ability to understand your thinking. Chochmah is that original thought. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes are the 3 primary emotions. When we say emotions, anger is not an emotion, sadness is not an emotion. These are New Age terms, New Age meaning in the last 500 years. These are modern terms. Sadness is not an emotion. Anger is not an emotion. These are combinations of different constructs. Chesed is a raw energy that involves outward flow. Gvura is a raw energy of restraint. Tiferes is a balance. It is its own entity. It's called balance. Balance is beautiful because balance is able to take opposites and make them coexist. Not only is that beautiful, but Tiferes is able to take opposites and not just allow them to coexist, but actually merge together to become a new entity. That is true beauty. That is true beauty, when you can take opposites and make them work together. Then you get the lower order Sefirot, which are refinements of the top of those 3, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and finally Malchus is our finished product. If you think about the creation of anything, whether it is the creation of existence or the creation of the tablecloth in front of you, there was an individual that conceived an idea and thought about that idea. It was to make a tablecloth, and thought about how that tablecloth was going to be made, and decided that it would be made of cotton. At which point that person was able to communicate to a textile manufacturer that I would like cotton. Can you make for me cotton weave? And the man said, or the woman said, sure, I can make cotton weave. And that person goes out and gets cotton and brings an abundance of cotton. So much, chesed, heaps of cotton. But at some point has to make a decision that is enough cotton. Gvura, restraint, no more. Tiferes starts creating by applying enough pressure to sow, but not enough to tear. When you give and take in moderation, you are giving a certain amount that requires outward flow, but you don't give too much, that requires restraint. If you have ever hugged a child and not suffocated them, then you have practiced a combination of chesed, love, and kindness, and outward engagement, but you haven't hugged them to the point of stifling because you restrain yourself. Gvura, a bit of restraint. Hold yourself back from absolutely squeezing this child too hard. If you have ever got a child in trouble, you have practiced gvura with chesed. Gvura, the child does something wrong, so you need to discipline the child. So let's say we're living in the 1960s and you smack the child. The reason why it's the 60s, because in the 50s and the 40s there was no chesed. When you whacked a kid, it was okay if they died. But by the time the 60s came along, there was already a movement to change. So there was a moderation in the hitting. So you smack the child, that's gvura, there's a punishment. You are restraining all care in this moment, and you punish them. However, you don't punish them too hard because there's still love. So there's gvura with a certain element of kindness. You are dealing with the situation while empathizing with them. Gvura is an act of detachment. Chesed is an act of attachment. Tiferes is balancing the two, and so on and so forth. Okay. So these are the same concepts as the creation of existence. First, there was the infinite light. And the infinite light is a euphemism, of course, for energy, which is a euphemism for words that we don't have. First, there was the infinite. And the infinite is. Everything is within the infinite. There are two forms of infinite. You can either have... what's your favorite food? Carrots. Giving a class to a bunch of rabbits. You have carrots. So you say, infinity is if I could have an infinite amount of carrots. You have a form of infinite, you do not have infinite. You have an infinite number of carrots, but you do not have infinity. Infinity is where you have everything and every option of everything. True infinity is all options, not just carrots. Infinite means you have everything. If there is a you, there is not infinite, because you are finite. If you are a part of the infinite, then we have the infinite. So the infinite one is when we talk about God, when we talk about Hashem, when we talk about the Eibishter, we're talking about the infinite. Within the infinite, everything exists, because it's infinite. All options exist within the infinite, including the options that can't exist, because it's infinite. And then the infinite allowed for finite, meaning it allowed for a space within itself to exist that there could be independent existence or a sense of independent existence. And that was the cholol. Had to restrain the light to create darkness. Darkness is the absence of light. Within that darkness, the infinite then allowed a flow of relative amount of light in. And there was dim existence. And within the dim existence, the universe could be created. Everything in this, and what is dim? What is dim? You know when you walk into a room and it's dim, is it dark or is it light? Well, you can't have that. That's impossible. So is it, what is it? It's dim. What is that? Is it light? A little bit is, when did we become so abstract? We're dim. Dim is both dark and light, which doesn't make sense because dark is the absence of light. You can't have a little bit of light and a little bit of absence of light within light. That doesn't make sense. So every morning that it's dim, be excited. It's an exciting idea. It's not dark. It's not light. It is both dark and light. It's just do your head in. It's fun. If you don't know how to meditate, I've just given you something. So we call this a mixture. It's a mixture. You know, when you're mixing colors, you put blue and yellow, and you get green. It's a mixture. Now, blue and yellow making green is a fascinating concept. Do you know what that would be called in Hebrew? Does anyone know how to say green in Hebrew? Yeah. You all say yarok, because yarok is the technical name for green. But I want to know what the name for blue and yellow perfectly mixed together is. So you'll say yarok, green. And I'm calling it hitkalalut. Or in Ashkenazi, hiskalalus. You like that? Hitkalalut means all-inclusive. When you have things that are all-included, they are a kolel. They are a collective. Now, there's another Hebrew word for mixture. How do you say mixture in Hebrew? Ta'aruvot. Ta'arov, mixture. Now, kolel is mixture. Well, we have two words for mixture all of a sudden. The Hebrew, the holy language that has no wastage, all of a sudden has two words for mixture. So we've got two types of mixtures. Kolel is a mixture of order. Kolel is a mixture of where everything in there has its place and it mixes perfectly. When you have a mixture of kolel, there is no good, there is no bad, everything is good, everything is perfect. You have a perfect mixture. When you have a perfect mixture, you don't dissect it. You use the term ta'arov, ta'aruvot, when you are describing a mixture of things that shouldn't be mixing together. I've got a mixture. When you have a ta'arov, when you have a mixture of things, there are different components. Whether they are blended or not, you call it a mixture of many things. But as long as it is a mixture of many things, you are identifying that there are many things within the mixture. Whereas when something is kolel, it is all included. What is the difference of a mixture of people or a collective of people? A mixture of people is multicultural, meaning we're making sure to keep all ethnic division. That way it's multicultural. But when it's a collective, we don't say, oh, there are Asians and Muslims and Jews and whites and Hispanics in the collective. A collective is a single voice. Multicultural is there are many cultures and we're not allowing them to mix nicely together. So that's why I have a bit of an issue with this term, we are a multicultural country, is a way of saying we like to keep track of all the many minorities that make up our wonderful society, as opposed to we are Australia. No, we are a mixture of people. I am me, and they are they. I don't kill them, and they don't kill me, and we call that peace. I call peace a marriage. Marriage is peace. It's not that we're not killing each other. Early days, Menachem. It's not that we're not killing each other. It's that we are one with each other. We are a unit. The reason why I bring this up is because this world is not a kollel. This world is not a collective. This world is a mixture. It is a mixture of good and bad. Everything in this world is good and bad. You show me one thing that is only good and not bad. I'm willing to challenge you. I'm sure you will find something. But I'm willing to challenge you that most things are still a mixture of good and bad. If you think about it. Let's look at this country's politicians. No, got nothing there. Let's look at this country's political parties and where they begin. The Liberal Party. What is the Liberal Party? They are a capitalist movement that believe in certain philosophies about how much you should provide society with and how much society should provide themselves with. And you know what? It is good logic. There is only one problem with liberal thinking, and that is that if you have not made it and you are struggling to make it, you may be struggling for a long time, and the government will not be giving handouts that are sufficient enough for you to live an honourable life. But on the other hand, they're making the country balance economically so that at least it can continue existing. I know I've just trivialized everything that stands for liberal politics. What's Labour? Labour is a social-minded political system. It believes in caring for the down and out. And it means spending the money that you have now to help those and stop worrying about investment for the future while people are suffering today. I know I've just trivialized that, but let's just go with those trivial. Which side is actually correct? So, raise your hand if you're a liberal. That's it? There we are. There we are. Raise your hand if you're a Labour. Oh, I've got a whole lot of donkey votes in here. Interesting. Okay, so a Liberal vote is bad? No. A Labor vote is bad? No. They're both correct, but both good things lead to a problem. Labor thinking doesn't protect tomorrow. Liberal thinking doesn't help today. Both of them are good and both of them are bad. If you think about everything, think about the food that you eat. There is no such thing as good food. There's no such thing. There's better food, but even better food has a problem. If you eat good food, trust me, there are elements that are not good for you. If you eat something that's good, it's not good for the person next to you. If you take medicine, it's no good for the person next to you. Nothing in this world is absolutely good. Because everything in essence, spiritually, is a mixture of tov and ra. Literally good and bad, but when we say tov and ra, we're talking about what is pure and what is not pure. Everything is a mixture. We as people are a mixture of that. We are good and we are bad, which is why we are capable of doing what's good and we are capable of doing what's bad. If people weren't bad, they would not be able to do bad things. The fact that we can do bad things means that we've got an element of bad within us. That doesn't mean that's what we are at our core. People at their core are good. However, we have layers. We are layers. We have layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers. And different layers influence us on different levels. Pesach is a time of stripping ourselves from our layers. Pesach is an anniversary of when we were removed from the confines of another world. The confine was slavery. We were physically slaves. We were enslaved to an extremely oppressive regime, and we were taken out. We were taken out and we were set free. So we went through Yetziat Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt. Meitzarim can also translate as confines, and it's the same concept. Egypt was a confining space. Meitzarim is a confine, which means that we are extremely limited by an outside force. Now, an outside force can be self-made, or an outside force can be imposed. You can create your own outside force. Doubt is an outside force that you create because it impacts you from inside, but then it surrounds you. And the whole way that you think is limited to your doubt. Or someone else can cast doubt and tell you, I don't think that's a good idea. And then those words cause you to doubt yourself, which leads to that confine. You can have someone that puts you in jail and removes your rights, and then you have some people that put themselves in jail and they remove their own rights and they put themselves in situations that challenge them unfairly or unnecessarily. So when we talk about Yetziat Mitzrayim, it's not just the exodus from Egypt, it's the concept of leaving the confines within our life. The worst confines that we have are self-imposed confines. I often reflect on the period of the Spanish Inquisition in 1480s, 1490s and beyond. And the Jews of Spain and Portugal were tortured and they were forced to convert. Now, this leads to a very interesting discussion as to what would happen to the Jew that converted, because they were forced. And the one thing that makes me chuckle is, yeah, some Jews converted, some didn't. They were tortured. Anyone who stayed back was tortured. Okay. What is incredible is that torture doesn't do anything. As in, the torturer doesn't really get what they're truly looking for. Because if I acquiesce, if I give in under torture, I haven't really given in. I've just cracked. I can't handle the pain. But I haven't really brought myself on board. Imagine I tortured someone to marry me, or you tortured someone to marry you. Would you want such a relationship? Would you be satisfied? The person goes, you know what? I'll marry you. Would you want to live with such a person? Would you find that fulfilling? No. Okay, you've got this spouse. It's wonderful. You can be seen in public with another half, but it's missing the depth. The depth can only be gained voluntarily. You can't force love. You can't force affection. So the concept of torture is fascinating because you get something, but you don't really get what you want. In fact, what you get is not even inferior quality. You're getting a shell of what you want. You're getting a shadow of what you want. You're getting what it looks like, but you're not getting it. Which means that in order to come somewhere, you need to arrive. You need to do it yourself. You need to bring yourself to there. Most of the things that hold us back in life from arriving at a destination is not outside of us, it is inside of us. And those things may be the product of things that have happened to us, or they may be the product of thinking that we have put ourselves, a thinking track that we have put ourselves on. Either way, it's not good enough. The story of Pesach says you don't have to live with your own baggage. You don't have to be a slave just because you were born a slave. You don't have to be a slave to your past. You don't have to be a slave to someone else. However, what you do need sometimes is opportunity. Sometimes we can create our own opportunity, and sometimes we require help. The story of the Exodus is a time of where we received help. It is not a time in which we fabricated our own journey. The only thing we fabricated was hope. Hope was then matched with an opportunity, which then we seized. We didn't create the Exodus. Our hope allowed for the Exodus to be offered. We didn't split any seas. We didn't take ourselves out. We were brought out. But we followed a leader because we were hopeful. So what every human is created with is the ability to hope, to believe. What we may not be able to do is escape. However, when the opportunity to escape arrives, if we're smart, we'll seize it, and if we're foolish, we won't. It's like the famous joke, which I actually hate, but I'm going to tell it. I hate it because everyone knows it, and I also hate it because it's so true, and I'm victim of it. The man is drowning in the ocean, and he says, God, send me a miracle. And the ship comes along, and the man says, no, don't worry, I'm drowning, but don't worry, I've prayed for a miracle. And he keeps drowning, and the ship sails off, and a helicopter comes, the Coast Guard, and they lower a ladder, and he says, no, I've got a miracle coming, don't worry. And he's treading water, and then a submarine comes up. And the captain of the submarine calls down from whatever it's called, and he says, grab the safety ring. We'll pull you aboard and we'll get you back to the dry land. He says, no, I've got a miracle coming. Anyway, the man drowns and he comes up to heaven, and he is one hell of an angry character. And God says, what are you getting angry with? What's with the attitude? He says, God, I prayed, I believed in you. Where was my miracle? And God's like, are you crazy? I sent you 3 miracles. I sent you a ship. I sent you a helicopter. I sent you a submarine. What more could I do for you? We sometimes think miracles are going to look like, I don't know, some weird shining light, without realizing that opportunities are presented. And half the time, if we actually analyze the opportunities that present themselves, we would realize what miracles they are. They never should have come our way. They never should have happened in the way that they did. They are miracles. Miracles don't have to be, miracles can be natural. Nature is a miracle. As in, nature is supernatural. Miracle means supernatural, right? Nature is supernatural. Just look at it. Have we got any statisticians in this room? Have we got any scientists in this room? None. What am I? Speaking to a bunch of...
Professionally or like as a hobby?
Nah, professionally. Only people who are going to say, like, Menachem, you're just not right. Those sorts of scientists. I know there's a scientist in here. They're just probably too embarrassed. Like, what's he going to say? This is a Kabbala class. He might, like, do some magic trick. And statistically speaking, I love how, statistically speaking, there is another inhabitable planet out there. Statistically speaking, there is intelligent life out there. Do you know why? Because statistically, there should be one. Statistically, we shouldn't be here. The number of things that have happened so perfectly, so precisely within nature to deliver us, the Homo sapien, to this point is incredibly impossible. You've got more chance of winning the lottery, and we all know we have no chance of winning the lottery. Nature is a miracle, as in nature is supernatural. Nature is beautiful. The whole first part of prayer is look at nature and be inspired. You want to know what God looks like? Look at nature. You want to know what God smells like? Go outside and take a deep breath. You know what God feels like? Go outside and breathe. Experience it. It's the lowest version, but it is an incredible experience. So we leave Egypt with the most incredible miracle. We can leave our own Egypt because miracles are always presenting themselves. Now, there are times where it's easier and times that it's harder. There are times in the year in which we will struggle against resistance of the forces of environment, of spiritual environment, of what have you. And then there are times that there is higher momentum. The reason why we're doing this class is because at this time of the year, there is a higher momentum, a higher energy, a higher ability to achieve change within. You say, Menachem, I don't understand that. That's fine. You don't have to understand everything. It's a bit like nighttime, it's a bit hard to see, and daytime, it's a bit easier to see. It makes no difference whether you slept or you stay awake. It makes no difference whether you eat or don't eat. It's an external condition that is taking place where in one you can see and one you can't. When the sun is up, you can see. When the sun is down, you can't see. When you can't see, you're more hesitant. Have you ever noticed that when you walk into a dark room, you suddenly slow down? Even if you know there's nothing on the floor, you still slow down because there is an instinct internally that when we can't see, we move into a cautious state and we become fearful. Have you ever noticed in a good horror movie, you will always notice that the scary scenes are at night. The people always forget to turn the bloody lights on in their house. If you know there's a ghost in there, turn the lights on. If you know that you're being stalked by someone that wants to use a knife to carve you up, turn all the lights on. Turn the stereo on. We don't need to hear that scary music. But no. They always walk on. It's always like this. They put the keys down. They walk up the hallway. You've passed the light switch. What do you do? Have any of you ever walked into your house and decided, no, tonight I'm not turning the lights on? I don't need it. Fine, there's a stalker outside, but I don't need it. Because darkness elicits fear. It is one of our survival instincts that when we can't see, we become cautious. When we can see, we can throw caution to the wind because we can see. We know what the risk ahead is. So, with Nisan and the period between Purim and Pesach, we're in a time of spiritual light. There is a greater energy. There is greater momentum that should you want to harness change within, the neshama, your soul, has the ability to connect to your consciousness. Your neshama has a greater ability to take control of your emotional faculty and be able to give you the determination to keep going. That is the energy at this time. It impacts us subconsciously. It impacts us on a very subtle level. We don't feel it. We don't sense it, not because it's not there, but because we're insensitive. We're insensitive. It's like this. How much noise did you just hear? And yet all that noise has been going on the whole time. I can hear the sound from the transformers in the light. I can hear the noise from the sound system. Now watch, I'll keep talking. Can you still hear the sound from the sound system? Yeah, it's been there the whole time. It's been there the whole time. In fact, I kept pausing and it was still there, but you weren't noticing it. You'd become dull to the sounds because we do that. It's the only way to survive. But it doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean we can't sense it. So too, we don't sense the incredible momentum. Do you know that when you walk with the wind in your back, you walk faster and you expend less energy? But you don't always realize that the wind is pushing you along. It doesn't mean it's not pushing you. The momentum of Purim to Pesach is a momentum that helps facilitate change. It doesn't mean you're going to be successful. It means that in a time of the year that you have higher chance of being successful, now is that time. Anger. What's anger? So this series is not about exploring the depth of anger, the laws of anger, the spiritual energy of anger. And trust me, anger is fascinating. Anger, ka'as, it's an amazing concept. The energy of anger is incredible. But I want to talk about anger's like love, right? It's exactly the same thing. When you're angry, your heart rate goes up. When you're in love, your heart rate goes up. When you're angry, you're very focused on something. When you're in love, you're very focused on something. When you're angry, it makes you do crazy things. When you're in love, it makes you do crazy things. It's all part of the same thing. It's an obsessive disorder, anger. So is love. Anger exists in a macro form and it exists on a micro form. You only get angry when there is an attachment. Who here cares about the whales? Okay. So the people in the room that just raised their hands, they probably get bothered when they hear about whales being washed up on shores, or when we read about the whales in SeaWorld, or whatever. What are those fish called? No, the black and white things. They're killer whales in SeaWorld? Okra? Okra's a vegetable. Orca. That's it, orca. Okra we eat, orca we don't. Well, I don't eat okra, but I know people that do. So you get upset. Then you get people who don't really care about whales, so you don't get upset. Whatever. You get some people that get all worked up when, I don't know, a whole lot of people in Pakistan get killed in a bomb, and then others don't really care. Anger is a result of attachment. When you're attached to something, you get angry about it. When you're detached, you don't get angry. You're apathetic. You're disconnected. Anger is the result of being attached in a negative way. Anger is not allowed. Now, when I say that, I'm willing to back myself, but I will just explain that sometimes when we use anger, we don't mean anger. Sometimes when people say I'm very angry, what they really mean is they are disappointed. Sometimes when they say they're angry, they actually mean they are very hurt. Sometimes when people say they're angry, they mean they're very upset. That doesn't mean they're angry. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be hurt. There are ways to minimize the pain, but it's okay. When we talk about anger, we're talking about that moment of absolute blasphemy. I don't mean blasphemy like you say the Lord's name. Blasphemy as in you are furious about the situation. Furious about the situation. How could this be? How could this be the situation? It's not fair, it's not justified, and if it was up to me, it wouldn't be like this. Have you ever said those words? If it was up to me, it would not be like this. That, my friends, I don't mean to sound biblical or anything, is blasphemy. It is really a problem. Because when a person says, if it was up to me, it wouldn't be like this. This is unfair. This is unjust. What we're really saying is there is no order to this world. Nothing happens with a purpose. There is no higher control. There is no greater consciousness. There is no desire for what is. This is all by chance, and I am being robbed of what is fair. It's an absolute denial of the infinite. There is an absolute denial of Hashem. There is an absolute denial that everything is happening for a precise reason at a precise time, whether good or bad. Whether good or bad. I'm going to just make that statement, get it out of the way. You can ask me about it all you want at the end of the class, but there is no such thing as bad. There is no such thing. Oh, what about Hitler? Oh, you ask me all the questions. There is no such thing as bad. There is only the thing that is perceived bad. And perceived bad is bad. What's the difference? That if something was absolutely bad, nothing good could ever happen after. If it's perceived bad, it means it is bad in the moment, but there is still the opportunity for something good to happen after. And if we look at all the tragedies in our individual life, or within our national life, or within our people's life, there is always something good that happened after. It doesn't undo the perceived bad. But because it is in context of a bigger good picture, it will always end up ending well on a macro level. When Mashiach comes and everything is reinstated to the ultimate good way, we will even come to appreciate how the bad thing was a good thing. But we will have to wait till then. Until then, we should feel pain and we should suffer as the result of anything that is bad. We should not say, it's really good. It's really good. Don't do that. But we go with a higher faith that even the bad that happens in our life is for a good reason that will ultimately be clear to us, and all the suffering will have been for nothing, and all the bad that has happened will become undone. I can't explain it, because we're not there yet. It's a bit like the person before they make their millions and they're down and out. You can't explain you're going to be a millionaire as a result of this tragedy or as a result of you losing your job. But what do they all tell in all the beautiful TED Talks and in all the wonderful conferences you've ever been to, where the multi-billionaire gets up and says, we were down and out. We were down. You know the guy that made Tesla? You know Tesla? Yeah, the car? He had 7 days before he would run out of all capital. 7 days of money left. Do you know what that feels like? I don't think there are many people in this room that know the feeling of having only 7 days of money left in your life. Where in a week from now, you know there will not be a cent in your bank account and there will be no horizon of money. Now you listen to the guy from Tesla. What's his name? Musk. He tells you the best story. Suddenly that 7 days is actually the linchpin to the story. If he doesn't have the 7 days, we don't want to hear his story. It's exactly the same thing. And if you have not invented the Tesla because you're still in the 7 days, realize everyone has a Tesla. If you don't know what a Tesla is and you don't know who Elon Musk is, I'm sorry. You've just missed the last 3 minutes. Tesla is a very cool electric car. Musk is the guy that invented it and had had the company that invented it. And pretty much you can work it out from there. Anger is where I have an absolute denial in this moment that what is happening is good, that what is happening is within control of a higher system. And anger only takes place when we are obsessive. That is why we normally get angry about things that happen to us, because we tend to obsess over ourselves in incredible amounts. Let's just press pause on anger and move to jealousy. Jealousy. What is jealousy? Jealousy is when you want something that you don't have. You're not jealous of people that have less than you. Anyone that says, oh, I am jealous of people that have less than me, no, you're not. You're jealous of something that they have that you don't have. So let's say someone says, I am jealous of the poor people in Bhutan. They have nothing. Okay, when you said those words, they have nothing, you're just trying to console yourself that you think you've got everything. Because what they have is happiness and what you don't have is happiness. So when you say nothing, you mean they have everything, I have nothing. You're only if you have all the money in the world, if you have all the health in the world, and you have all the family in the world, and everything is good, I promise you'll never be jealous. We are only jealous of people who have something, intelligence, looks, something of value, something we want. Those are the people we are jealous of. Jealousy is, again, an obsessive condition of we are obsessed with something to one degree or another, to the point that we want it, it's not available to us, someone else has it, and I have that negative feeling. Very similar to anger in some of its core similarities. There is a focus and a connection with, and there is another commonality. When we are jealous of someone, we also don't accept the fact that we don't have it, because if we did, we wouldn't want it. We do want it, and we don't accept the fact that we don't have it, and therefore we want it. We want it now. And it's not fair that they got it now and we didn't, no matter what it is. I need a bit more money. I am jealous of people with more money. I need a bit more health. I'm jealous of people with health. I would like a life partner. I'm jealous of those who have a life partner. Is it justified? Should a person not want money? Should a person not want health? Should a person not want love? It sounds like I could be doing some Broadway show. Or not. Yes, we should want, but jealousy is not want. Want is want. Jealousy is the negative, the looking negatively at what someone else has and wishing it ill on them and positively on us. Depression. Again, not clinical depression. Depression is the most dangerous of the three things because jealousy and anger are passionate. Depression is the opposite. Depression is when you're in a dark space and you're not moving. You've given up. The point of depression is the point at which you don't see the light. You don't see a way out, and therefore you stop moving. Depression is one of the worst places because it impersonates one of the best places. Remember what I once said about rape? Lahavdil, to separate between two topics. What's rape? Rape is one of the worst things, or any sexual misdemeanor, is one of the worst things you could do in another person. And what is love? Sexual union in a state of love. It is one of the greatest ways of connecting with a person. When you engage in a state of love and you are intimate, you are completely one. In a state of love, you don't exist, only they do. In a true union of two people, each one doesn't exist. They live for the other. So in a loving relationship, one lives for the other and the other lives for the other one. And there's this beautiful tandem. And then when they engage in an act of sexual union, it's incredible. Each one feels absolutely complemented, blissful and happy with the other. What's rape? It is two people engaged in the exact same act, in a complete state of detachment, in a complete state of selfish existence, although let's just focus on the perpetrator. Although the victim also doesn't want to be there, isn't thinking about the other, but that's in a good way. Why should they? So let's only talk about the perpetrator. The perpetrator is only doing this for themselves. It is only about their pleasure. The other person does not exist, except as a tool. It basically doesn't exist. They have no rights. They have no anything. They don't even register. It is all about the perpetrator. Exactly the same act. Because it is so pure, so it is impure. It is so powerful a form of unifying, it is so disastrous and destroying and leading to decay, which is why any sexual crime should be punished with the most possible severity, because it is one of the most ultimate ways of destroying another individual without actually killing them. So, what's depression? Depression is being still, not moving, not able to hear, not able to see, in a complete state of stillness and silence. But the stillness and silence is negative. What is the ultimate state of bliss? What is the ultimate? The ultimate is meditation while not doing anything on Shabbat. Shabbat is the day of rest. Shabbat is the day of cessation, Saturday, the seventh day of the week. Vayonach bayom hashvi, and Hashem rested on the seventh day. What does it mean Hashem rested? It didn't stop. The energy of life continues, but the creative energy stopped. There was nothing new. Everything was as everything is, or everything is as everything was. It stops. When we are not doing something on the day of cessation, we can reach a point of unity with the infinite that is not available to us any other day of the week. That's why it says when Mashiach comes, it will be Kulei Shabbos. It will be all Shabbos. We'll be in a complete state of union the whole time. It sounds exactly the same. Be still and don't move in a passive existence. One is blissful and one is terrible. One is the ultimate place to be and one is the place that you wish you never were. It looks exactly the same. It's the it's the inverse version of itself. Depression, that dark state, is where you stop moving. You're no longer heading in any direction. So even if you're moving, it's moving with having given up. You're alive because you're not dead. I had a teacher who used to always begin, every so often he'd begin a class by saying, are you alive because you're alive, or you're alive because you weren't hit by a truck? And it would make us think. It's a good question. He said, are you living vibrantly, functionally? Are you achieving? Or is time just delivering you to the next moment? And when we're depressed in that state of absolute atzvus, where we have just lost all hope, there is nowhere to go. We can't hear the people that are trying to help us out. We can't see the ladder to climb out, and we definitely don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. What is the commonality between depression and the other two? Is that when a person is in that depressed state, once again, they're in a state of where there is no higher. I don't know why I'm here, and there's nothing that can get me out. Hope is lost in a depressed state, in a truly depressed state. There is no hope. There is no being a part of something greater. In anger, I don't accept that there's anything higher. I'm upset about this situation because I don't believe there is any higher context. In jealousy, I want it and it's not fair that I don't. I don't accept that the higher will wants it to be this way. I want it and I should have it, and I don't accept that I don't. It is not the same as determination. It is not the same as working hard, because working hard is positive and jealousy is negative. Jealousy is all about how unfair it is, and working hard is about striving for the good that other people have. It's not the same. Pesach, these three things are the most debilitating aspects within the human. Bar the two things we're going to explore next week, which are completely different, which is the ability to let go, and that's a whole different angle. But these three things, if you think about it, anger, how much does anger consume you at times? How much time do you spend getting angry? How much time do you spend on jealousy? How much of your motivation exists because it's rooted in jealousy? And how many times have you gone through periods of depression of where, and again, I don't mean clinical depression, I'm talking about where you've just become apathetic and lost hope and nothing will get better. These are really debilitating things that only are born within. You can't force depression on someone. You can't force anger on someone, nor can you force jealousy. These are all self-constraints. These are all meitzarim. These are all confines that we experience. And why do we say confine? Because you can't move out of them. When you're angry, there's a cute meme going. There's a cute meme going around Facebook and it asks, when was the last time anybody calmed down because they were told to calm down when they were angry? When's the last time? And yet we always do it. Like, I got my little daughter, my son, and they're crying. Ah! It's okay, just calm down. Ah! It doesn't happen. So I don't believe what happened. Just calm down. And when you see the police, sir, just calm down. It's like no one's calming down. But we say it. How many times have we brought these things on? They're not brought on us. We take them on. I've seen people suffer. I've seen my grandparents. All four of my grandparents are Holocaust survivors. They're not all alive, but they're all survivors. All four got married to each other. All four had children. All four carried incredibly large pekalach. All four were permanently traumatized by what they experienced. But none of them lived with absolute negativity. They lived with frustration and upsetness. But you know what? They say they were angry, but it wasn't an anger that consumed them. It wasn't an anger that consumed them. If it was, they never would have been able to achieve what they achieved. They could say all the dark things about the Holocaust. The fact is they saw light in their world. What's incredible is that they suffered, but they didn't take the suffering on board. I'm sure there were periods, of course they did. But by and large, if I look at the final 70 years of their lives, 60 years of their lives, they were mostly not suffering. Even if it did haunt them every night in their dreams. Even if they did cry that they didn't have any family. Even if they did, but the fact is, they lived with more joy than they did with anger. They lived with more contentment than jealousy. And they definitely believed in trucking forward. In fact, one of the most annoying things that Holocaust survivors do tell people is to keep going. Why? Because we can't argue with them. We can argue with anyone else. Someone else says, no, you've got to keep going. We say, not so easy. You haven't lived in my shoes. What are you going to tell someone who went through Auschwitz? Not so easy. What are you going to tell them? You don't know what it means to suffer. These people own suffering. They own it. I bet you some yid in 1950 trademarked suffering. I'm sure of it. Someone trademarked it. Suffering, that's ours. That's ours. Another, some African nation gets up and says, we're suffering. I don't know about that. We suffered. It's ours. You find a different word. You're not happy. So, I don't mean to make light of anything. I'm just using Jewish humor to dig myself into a bigger hole. So, these things are self-constraints, ultimately. And Kabbala and especially Hasidic wisdom says that these are self-constraints. So what's the way out of it? Because that's really what we're exploring. So, number one, as I said, this is a 3-week series. Number two, I'm going to begin. I'll begin. I'm going to tell a story. Okay, there was a Chassid of the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic way of thinking, the philosophy to life. And the Chassid came to the Baal Shem Tov and said, Sorry. It was a student of the Maggid, the student of the Baal Shem Tov. The Maggid was the student of the Baal Shem Tov, and he had a student that came to him and said, I understand the idea of blessing God when things are good, but I don't understand the concept. There's a concept, kashem shemavarach ala tov, kach mavarach ala ra. Just as you have to thank God when things are good, so we must thank God when things are bad. He said, I understand the first half, thank God when things are good. I don't understand, how could a person thank God when things are bad? How's that a fair thing? You know, people say, Baruch Hashem. People often ask me, how am I? I say, Baruch Hashem, good. Blessed is God. And people sometimes laugh when I say it in English, thank God, because if it's not something that they're used to hearing, they're like, that is so weird. I didn't realize you were like an evangelist. Thank God. Well, you haven't watched my TV show. So we say thank God. So he says, what are you meant to say? Oh, unfortunately, there was a death in the family. Thank God, thank God. How do you thank God for the bad? So the Maggid said, go travel to such and such town and ask this character, Reb Leivik. Okay, travels. And he travels and he knocks on the door. And the door just opens up. There's no latch. He walks in and he sees a single room house. There's hay in one corner, which is the mattress. There's hay in the corner, which is another mattress. There's a table leaning against the wall. There's a stove in the corner. There's a single pot on top. There is not much in this little joint. And there's a man bent over a book and is studying and is coughing and you can hear his breathing is terrible. And he looks up, the door's flung open, the kids are running around, and he looks up from his book. And the chassid says, I was sent here. And the man says, by whom? He says, by the Maggid, the teacher, our great master. Says, the Maggid sent you to me? Why would the master send you to me? I'm just one of the students. We're colleagues. And he said, I asked him a question. He said, yeah, and what did he answer? He said, go talk to you. So the man says, go talk to me? What's the question? I can't answer you. We're colleagues. Whatever you know, I know. He said, I'll tell you, I asked the Maggid, I understand the idea of thanking God and blessing God when things are good, but I don't understand the idea of thanking God and blessing God when things are bad. And the guy looks at him and he says, I've always been troubled by that as well. I don't understand it. But then again, I've never experienced suffering, so I don't really relate to it more than the academic discussion. Maybe the Maggid can answer us. And the man's looking, and the house is bare. The man's got a breathing problem. There's no latch on the door. And he says he's never suffered. The question is an academic one to him. And that's really where we're going to begin. How does a person achieve that? It's perspective. Of course it's perspective. You knew I was going to say that. I've taken the longest route to getting here. But the question is not what the answer is. We all know the answer. I'd be shocked if there was anyone in this room that says, Menachem, you're all wrong. Depression, anger, and jealousy, they're justified. I actually came to make sure that they were justified. We all knew that I was going to shift the blame to us and we were going to have to change our perspective. The question is how? How do we achieve what this chassid achieved? How do we genuinely live life without jealousy? So let me tell you the short version right now so no one can go home saying, he always does this. Recently, I was learning, I learned quite regularly the teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Lubavitcher Rebbe taught from 1951 until 1992. How many years is that? 40-something years. For 40-something years, he spoke publicly on a weekly and daily basis. And he wouldn't speak his thoughts. He wasn't like me. They're just like, I've got an idea. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. These were well-researched, deep, mystical ideas that were presented in very, very clear, not simple, clear words that would take stories and narratives of the Torah, combine them with teachings of Kabbala, the allegorical method of medrash, and practical news of the day. Incredible. For 40-something years he did this. And he always laid out his questions in the beginning, and he always laid out his answers at the beginning. And then he would go through method. And I only learned this recently, that it was pointed out to me that that's how he worked. Because I always used to build up a question and then start answering because you keep people engaged. And that wasn't his method. And so I'm going to give you the answer because I think his method is right. What if you're not going to be here next week? So you're left with a good question? For what? I've just really confirmed the doubts. So we got to have some answers. Number one, jealousy. Everything is about tikkun. Everything is about tikkun in this series. Tikkun is about building the correction, creating an order. Remember what I said? Kollel is where everything fits beautifully together. Ta'arov is where everything exists with distinction. As in, you can see the distinct nature of every aspect. We want to have a kollel. We want that everything in our lives fits perfectly. Jealousy. I'm going to give you a piece of theory. I'm not going to explain how to achieve it until next week. When experiencing jealousy and seeing what someone else has and you want it, the first thing to do is stop thinking about it. That usually works for all of no time. The next thing that you can do is engage it. The Baal Shem Tov teaches that when a person sits and meditates during prayer, thoughts will enter the mind. Who here has meditated? We're all going to meditate in a moment. You meditate and thoughts pop up. And the Baal Shem Tov says when these thoughts pop up, allow them to exist because the thoughts are telling you something to correct within yourself. The Alter Rebbe, 2 generations later, Rabbi Zalman of Liadi, says, don't touch the thoughts in meditation. He says, not because the holy Baal Shem Tov was wrong, but because we don't know how to sift through our thoughts. Our thoughts are a complex world. The Baal Shem Tov was telling his students, analyze the thoughts. They're going to betray to you who you are on a deep level. So let's say you have sexual desire at a time of prayer and they elicit sexual desires. Why are these popping in your head? So there's something deep within to do with love, to do with your relationship with a loved one that needs correction. It's manifesting in this really strange, negative way because it is a negative thing that is going on within. It's not that you have a sexual issue, but you have something. Sex is always built in love. You have a love problem. This is just one example he gives. The Alter Rebbe says, stop, don't engage. We don't know what our thoughts represent, the average layperson, so we just wait until the thought passes. But you're missing out on a tikkun. You're also missing out on a life of extreme stress. You're missing out on a life of extreme challenge because we don't know where we're going. We haven't got the map to read our own mind. So we can either leave it or we can say, jealousy, I think we can get to the root of. Let's follow the Baal Shem Tov's thinking. When you're jealous of someone that has something, the first thing is to become besimcha, to become filled with joy. When you see someone who drives a nice car and you're jealous, you say, oh, I wish I had that car. That's a negative response. When you see someone who has a nice car, you should do this. Nice car. Nice car. Acknowledge the situation, don't own it. It's a nice car. It's taka a nice car. Say it's a nice car. Say the words, it's a nice car. Whew, must be pleasant to drive. You see someone that you think is more beautiful than you, look at their clothes and say, beautiful. Fits beautifully. Create a certain detachment. Create a certain disconnect from your own negativity and appreciate the good within that situation. And we're going to do that in the meditation in a moment. Anger. When we, of course, I've got to talk about that in quite a bit of depth. Anger. Get angry about something. The injustice of it all. Kach mavorach ala tov, kach mavorach ala ra. Just as things are good, when things are good we bless, so when things are bad. At a time of anger, where the injustice of it all, and it's unfair, and if it was up to me it would never be like this, come to appreciate how you exist, how every breath keeps you alive, how the tree produces the oxygen so that you can breathe, that you are able, hopefully, to go to the toilet, that you can hear through your ears and see through your eyes, that the miracle of life is taking place. And then realize you are the miracle of life. We are a part of the very great consciousness. We exist because the divine consciousness wants us here. And just as the divine consciousness wants us here, so it wants us to go through this. Why? Because this is the stepping stone to achievement. It is this terrible moment that is going to deliver us to something incredible. And you can't say it's not true because I know someone that suffered and then died. Because if you're going to die, you're going to a better place. And if you're not going to die, you're going to a better place. You can't say, well, based on everyone else, it's not going to work out. Who are you? What, we're prophets all of a sudden? Appreciate the miracle that allows you to exist in this moment and realize this moment is a miracle. And say this moment exists within a fixed consciousness, a certain specific will. You say, Menachem, that is very, very hard. So I say, come back next week. Depression. Depression is the only thing where there is no theory. Depression, you've given up. You can't keep going. You have to look in the mirror and look very carefully at what's looking back at you. And when you stare in that mirror, you will notice the most interesting thing. There is no giraffe looking back at you. There is no hippopotamus looking back at you. If you're a male, there is no female looking back at you. If you're a female, there is no male looking back at you. You are looking back at you. A human being is looking back at you. What's so cool about a human being? A human being is a completely different species from all other species on the planet and within the universe, in that we have higher consciousness. We have the ability to ascribe meaning to a situation. Giraffes and zebras do not ascribe meaning. There is no significance in the existence of the plant or the animal kingdom. Only we ascribe meaning. Only we have the concept of holy. Only we revere things. Only we can outdo ourselves. Only we say things like, I'm not eating today, it's a fast day. As I like to point out, you will never get a lion going, oh, there's a zebra. Vegetarian. Not today. Not because carnivores can't become omnivores, but because carnivores don't have the brain to consider. They don't have a higher awareness of what is going on. They have an awareness of what's going on, but they don't have the higher awareness. Whereas when you look in that mirror, you look at yourself and you say, that's not just me. I am me. I control the character in the mirror. Look. And you'll notice the thing in the mirror is doing this as well. I have the ability to practice Mayach Shalat Al Alev. I have the ability to practice that the mind rules the emotion. That I can push myself even if I don't want to. Have you ever driven? Have you ever driven and nodded off at the wheel? Even for a second. Have you ever gone, roll down all the windows, crank the music up, and just then for the next few minutes you drive like this. You're trying to sing along, you don't know the music, you just want to hear yourself, you're alive. You are able to push yourself in, by the way, if that's not a good way to practice mind over emotion, but you are able to push yourself incredibly, not because you can, because we are designed like that. And we all know when we push ourselves, we don't think about it. Who here has ever been on a hike? Or anyone that's been in the army? I've got two brothers that were in the Israeli army. They both ended up in really cool, everyone in the Israeli army. I think people that clean kitchens end up in a really cool department that cleans the kitchen. It's a special forces that just peels potatoes. It's a very, no one else, these guys, they're going through, it's a whole different skill, my friend. Am I right? It's a whole different skill. We are all, but what is the secret to getting through all these things? If you've ever gone on a hike and you just can't keep going. I remember once dehydrating in Israel, and I was an hour and a half away from where we needed to get, and I remember just collapsing and telling my friend Issa, I said, Issa, I'm not moving. I can't go on. Just call the rangers, get a helicopter to airlift me. And he said, what are you, crazy? I said, my parents will pay for it. It will be fine. Now, my parents would have had to sell their house to pay for a helicopter to come get me. But at that moment, and then I got up and I remember walking step after step after step. All I wanted to do was take one more step. I wasn't rationalizing that, you're just dehydrated, but you actually have incredible amounts of energy still within and blah, blah, you're just burning fats. None of that. There was no science. When you are in that state of challenge, all you do is take one more step. All you do is one more step. There's actually no theory. We're doing the theory right now because we can practice Me'ach Shalat Alev. The mind can dictate what my next response is going to be as long as it is my situation. And that deep, dark sadness is mine. I bring it on, not necessarily deliberately, but it is mine to walk through. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. Who said you had to walk towards the light? Who started designing the rules about how to get through the darkness? Because we all know the light at the end of the tunnel is a mirage. Because as we start walking, the vibration of our movement, I know this is going to sound very cliche, and it is, but the vibration of our movement shatters the darkness, and the light which was always there is finally able to break through. Next week, we're going to look at how do we actually undo anger and overcome anger? How do we undo jealousy and overcome jealousy? How do we undo depression? No, not how do we undo depression. How do we pull through depression? Because these are the Meitzorim that are holding us back. These are the limitations that are holding us back. After that, what was the next part on how to let go and what's on the flyer? Letting go of hurt and pain. Okay, so I knew there were two things, but it's the one thing. And then we're going to talk about, which is ultimately a combination of forgiveness and letting go of past challenge, which will be so simple once we've covered these three. Because these three, that letting go of hurt and pain is actually a subset of these three, as we will see when we get there. So I would like to do a very simple meditation with you all now. This is what you need, whether going through anger or jealousy or depression. This is not the secret to overcoming. This is the secret to the first step. Okay? It's not a long meditation, but before we do it, I'm sorry that I've gone so long. I really am. I'm going to ask everyone to just make their phones on absolute silence. And once you have, you can close your eyes. Okay. So just come to your breathing. And let's take 3 deep breaths together. 3 deep breaths in and out, focusing on the in-breath and that whole experience of breathing in, the expansion, the raising, and then the breathing out, the air leaving, the compression inside, and then that desire to take another breath in. Once you've finished taking those 3 very deep breaths, I want you to just return your breathing to something more comfortable and natural. And just see if you can remain focused on your breathing. Let's take a few moments to scan our body from head to toe. And as we scan, we're looking for any pain or tension. Discomfort at any point. And as you discover it, just be open to it, notice it, and then progress beyond it. Just move towards the end of the body scan. And once you have, come back to your breathing. As you're sitting here breathing, you may notice different thoughts passing through your mind. Some of them may have taken you, and if they have, just come back to your breathing. Every time a thought takes you on a journey, just move back to your breathing. And the way you do that is not by stopping the thought, it's by shifting your focus to the breathing. And what you may be discovering is this ability to pay attention to the breathing while noticing many thoughts coming and going. Just notice as the thoughts come and go, do they come in clusters? Do they come evenly? And by asking yourself these questions, you'll notice that you're observing them, you're not engaging them. And just consider how this exercise could help in an angry or jealous situation which emotionally grabs you. And realize we have this incredible ability to detach. It's not necessarily easy, but it's an ability. When you're ready, you can come back to your breathing. Sense the chair and the ground beneath you. Come back to your breathing. Prepare yourself to come back into the room. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. You can just sit for a moment. That exercise is an incredibly powerful exercise. I'll just recap. You were breathing. You scanned your body. You may have noticed pain. You acknowledged it and moved on. You didn't get lost in the pain, I hope. The purpose of the exercise was to not get lost in the pain. And then you moved beyond. And then we came back to the breathing, and I deliberately allowed you to be able to have thoughts. And of course, the mind played into exactly what I wanted, muhaha. And but what we were hopefully able to do was get lost with our thoughts, because that's sometimes inevitable, but then detach and observe the thoughts. I asked you to think of your thoughts, consider your thoughts in clusters and singular, so you could watch them almost from a detached, like you were observing. And that is the step to emotionally detaching in a situation which you don't need to be emotionally attached. Next week, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to provide the Kabbalistic knowledge, the Hasidic theory of action, and something that I don't think I've ever explored, which in this group, which I will, is actually provide a couple interesting mantras. So, mantras, in certain schools of Kabbala, we have mantras, things that we say, and they create a new energy. And I'm going to actually provide a couple that you can try out, see if they work for you, for situations that we're focusing on anger, situations that we're focusing on jealousy or depression. We want to experiment and explore over the next 4 weeks, because now is when the window of opportunity to achieve is open. So I'm looking forward. So next week will be, this week was quite, I'll say, light. You may agree, you may not. In that I was able to skim the surface of these subjects as they're explored in the Hasidic world. Next week, I'd like to dissect some of these things from a Kabbala point of view, energies, words, numerical value to understand the linkage, and we'll get that little bit deeper with method of change. And then we can explore letting go, which will be really a lot easier after next week. Again, if I was callous about anything, I apologize. If you've never seen me in action, you can see I've got a serious case sometimes of foot and mouth disease. But I hope I didn't offend anyone too badly. So Pesach is arriving. We're going to work hard. Meitzarim, we all have personal challenges, and they are within. They are external, but they start within. We are a taruvot, not a histgalulut. We are a mixture of good and bad, and therefore there is bad that needs dealing with within us. We are not a perfect mix, but we can get there. We suffer from depression, anger, and jealousy. These are things that are very real, and they don't just go away. However, becoming detached and realizing is the first step. Realizing that they are all the results of a lack of clarity, of understanding of the infinite's will in this moment is what allows them to manifest. And ultimately for depression, we practice the Merch Shalat Lev. We take that next step, not because we understand it, but because we have the sheer strength to be able to do that. That is where we have left off tonight. Next week, we'll understand why, how, and some quick trick mantras to possibly help. See ya.